Every day we're learning more about what Donald Trump's initial strategy for dealing with coronavirus was going to be. And we now know that one of his strategies was going to be dealing with it by doing absolutely nothing and letting it wash over the country, killing potentially millions of people. So here are the details. During one task force meeting in the Situation Room last month, Trump turned to Dr. Fauci and challenged him. It was the day the administration was adding Ireland and the UK to its travel restrictions, and Trump wanted to understand why talk of, quote, herd immunity, allowing the coronavirus to sweep a nation largely unchecked, with the belief that those who survived would then be immune, was such a bad idea. Why don't we let this wash over the country? Trump asked, according to two people familiar with his comments, a question other administration officials say he has raised repeatedly in the Oval Office. Fauci initially seemed confused by the term wash over, but became alarmed once he understood what Trump was asking. Quote, Mr. President, many people would die, Fauci said. And that many people is, depending on your model, hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of Americans. And he didn't just ask it once, which would have been insane. He repeatedly brought it up. Why can't we just let this kill a bunch of people? And that's your solution. A solution, conveniently, that doesn't require him to do anything. Certainly, he doesn't have to shut down the economy and potentially hurt his reelection chances.
I mean, I do think, and I'm really grateful for people like Dr. Fauci and actual scientists. I mean, I think the one thing this administration needed was someone with their feet in reality. And like most people, I think, all the sycophants that surround Trump would just hear the term wash over and be like, yeah, we all got to wash our hands. Or like, yeah, he means killing everybody. So like they all take away these different interpretations. No one actually presses him on exactly what he is saying. But then you have doctors and scientists who are like, no, clarify. That's not a scientific term, wash over. All right.
It's not.
Right. Do you mean allow the virus to fester and to infect and kill perhaps 2 million Americans? Because again, this was around the same time that he was getting those figures in.
Yeah, and it's not a scientific term. I haven't heard it used on House. But also, like, think of that as a strategy. Okay, so this thing's going to hit. It's going to kill a lot of people. What's your strategy? Well, let's just let it infect people and not do anything. That's the exact thing that we're trying to avoid. That's not even 1 inch difference between just, well, what if we didn't know that it was out there? And just lots of people got sick and lots of people got hospitalized and lots of people died. That was his solution. You put a guy like Donald Trump.
And also someone needs to explain that it's not the chicken pox.
Exactly.
Okay, sir, remember the chicken pox. Right. And then you go through the whole thing. What are the chicken pox? Oh, yeah, that's when, like, the chicken that you get from the store has little blemishes. You're like, no, sir, not that. No. Oh, yeah, that's when the Native Americans were killed up. No, sir, not that. And then explain that it's not the chicken pox. And I mean, we're seeing right now, South Korea this morning, I think, revealed that actually some people who were previously infected or tested positive, or tested that they were clear, they were infected, then were clear, are now testing once again positive. So the herd immunity idea of that even people who were once sick can actually go out. And I think one of the hopes that some people had was that those people who got sick can then be the first responders because they would have been immune to it. It's looking like it's harder to shake than that. This is a really dangerous and hard to shake virus. So it's not even based in science as much as we wish it were true.
Yeah. And everyone, again, virus, not bacteria. Pretty important for our officials to know. Absolutely devastating. And from what I've read, they're not even sure. Like, some are saying that these people, many of them were not re-exposed to it. It was reactivated. And we know of other viruses that can lay dormant and then can come back. Right. Hypothetically, we don't know what the limit on that is. Is it that it can come back after a couple of weeks? Can it come back after 6 months, 5 years? We honestly don't know. But we need to learn. We do. Yeah. Now, really fast, when I saw this story over the weekend about the wash over, I remembered, as many of you might have, that this was a term that he had used in public many times. Sometimes he would say wash through. Sometimes he would say wash over. So I went back to find some of these videos, and I found one, and I want you to listen to this now. Now that we know what he means by this term, because at the time we did not. Now we know. Take a look at this video.
It seems to me that if we do a really good job, we'll not only hold the death down to a level that is much lower than the other way, had we not done a good job, but people are talking about July, August, something like that. So it could be right in that period of time where it washes through. Other people don't like that term, but where it washes through.
Okay, so he says other people don't like that term. We now know what he was thinking when he said that. He was thinking of the many times he's been in the Oval Office and he's used that expression, and they've said, no, you monster, that means hundreds of thousands or millions of people will die. And he said, the evidence that we will have done a good job is when it washes through. And will have saved many more lives than in the other way, which we now know would be responding in any way, because his preferred response is to do nothing. And he was talking about it on there. He was thinking about those meetings where people like Dr. Fauci were telling him, no, you obviously can't just let everyone get sick and die unaided. And he was still talking about it, even after being corrected many, many times by people who were not only trying to save lives, but also trying to protect him from himself.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that every time he's given a set of words, it's like me when I'm on the main show and I'm not allowed to swear and all the words are in front of me. Suddenly I want to say those words. Once again, I am not the president of the United States, but every time someone tells him, hey, do not refer to this virus as the Chinese virus. What was the other thing around Iran? Someone's going to comment about this. There was some other thing that he wasn't supposed to say, and then he immediately said it. He somehow believes that his advisors are just trying to hold him back, you know? They're just trying to restrain his mega alpha brain from just, you know, spitting fire. And that is very scary.
It is. I don't remember that. I do remember the time that he was given a note, don't congratulate. I don't know if it was to Putin or to who. I don't remember. But it was like the one thing. Yeah. And then, of course, famously, we saw his notes from one of these meetings where he crossed out coronavirus and write in China virus or whatever. Mm-hmm. Absolutely insane. And the thing is, like, this sort of story, the idea that the president had to be repeatedly stopped from just surrendering in the face of a pandemic that he was being told would kill a ungodly number of Americans, a World War II of Americans, effectively. It's kind of news. Kind of? A little bit. I'm doing it on Monday. It happened over the weekend that it came out. How many shows are talking about it? Is it all over CNN right now? That he, like, had to be stopped from just disarming in front of it. And it doesn't matter. He'll lose no support. Like, how many Trump supporters would have died as it washed over? Would it washed over Georgia and Texas and all, like, how many people would have died?
I also keep thinking about the analogy to war, and if this actually is a war, then doctors and nurses and hospital workers and grocers, they are our soldiers, right? They are going to be our vets. They are putting their lives on the line and putting their families at risk. And we're always supposed to venerate those soldiers, and yet he's completely throwing them under the bus. He has total disrespect. We know he actually doesn't respect veterans, but he's definitely not respecting these frontline workers in his so-called invisible war. And I can't imagine. And I know there are people watching, and I know there are people whose family members have either been sick or maybe even passed away, or who are working every single day. And I can't imagine trying to get up in the morning and go out to work on this horrible, horrible virus and watch people die and know that your president has no idea what he's talking about and is completely disrespectful of your work. I just want to say that we do respect you and we thank you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And to see that, like, so I track the numbers every day, and yesterday actually was lower than the previous days. It did start to go down a little bit. It's looking pretty rough so far this morning, but that seems like good news. But I remember like 3 or 4 days ago, they already cut support for the community testing centers. Way premature. Cut support for it. He's been checked out for like a week and a half now at this point. And like, look, hopefully the measures that a number of responsible governors took will be successful. Hopefully, it seems like people were more responsive to the suggestion to stay home than perhaps the models might have thought that they would be, that people were actually very good about that. It's still 23,000 Americans have already died. And God only knows when if it starts reactivating in people, as you know, the international example seems to indicate that it might, or if we, unlock down prematurely and it starts to spread, perhaps in some areas that it hasn't so far, that might not have stocked up necessarily on the resources that they need. It's just devastating to think about these numbers, and to think that these numbers are still far lower than what some in positions of power like Donald Trump were perfectly willing to accept, to even plan to create.